Okay, so we're going to start by looking at the derivative of inverse trig functions. But before we dive into even trig functions or derivatives, let's just review a little bit about inverse functions. We're going to start with a very simple one of y equals x squared. Okay, y equals x squared. We're very well aware that this is going to be the point 0, 0, and then I'm going to have a point 1, 1. I'm going to have a point 2 up 4. I'm going to have a point at negative 1, 1. And I'll have a point at negative 2 up 4. Okay? And the graph's going to come down like this, and then it's going to come up and over like that. Okay, so we know that if we were to take this graph and flip it over the line y equals x, that's going to be your inverse function. So basically I'm going to take all these points right here. If this is over 2 up 4, instead I'm going to go over 4 up 2. And that's going to result in the inverse graph over here, over 4 up 2. Okay, and if I went over 1 up 1, I'm still going to go over 1 up 1. 0, 0 is still going to stay put. Negative 1, 1 is going to become 1, negative 1. And negative 2, 4 is going to become 4, negative 2. Okay, so this is the graph here. Now, if I wanted to work with this algebraically, okay, I'm going to switch my x and my y. So y equals x squared are going to switch. So I'm going to get x is going to equal y squared. So if I solve this for y, I'm going to get y is equal to plus or minus the square root of x. Okay, so this is the square root of x graph, the plus, and this is the minus. These two equations put together make this green graph. Okay, so now we're ready. Let's start talking about derivative. Let's talk about the derivative of the inverse function. We're not going to talk trig functions yet. So let's talk about the derivative of this. Let's take this point 2, 4. Okay? If I want to find the slope of this tangent line, okay, the slope of this tangent line would be found by taking y equals x squared, and I'm going to take the derivative. So y prime is going to give me 2x, and y prime at 2 is going to give me 2 times 2 is going to give me 4. So the slope of this line is 4. Okay. Now what's going to happen, this is 4 over 1, so really all we have to do is switch our reciprocal here and make it 1 over 4. This should be, at this point right here, this should be a slope of 1/4. Okay. 1 over 4. We're just going to switch the x and the y. So this was 4 over 1. So this derivative should be a slope of 1/4. But let's look at the math behind that. So I'm going to start off with the equation of y equals the square root of x. Now I'm only looking at the top half because the coordinate I'm interested in is 4, 2 right here. So I'm going to plug in y equals square root of x. Okay, so y is going to equal x to the 1/2. So the derivative of that is going to be 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. And now I want to evaluate. Now we don't want to plug in 2 this time because it's at 4. So if I plug in at 4, that's going to be 1/2 of 4 to the negative 1/2. And that's going to be 1/2 times 1 over 4 to the 1/2. And 4 to the 1/2 is going to give us 1/2 times a half. Half times a half, which will give us 1/4. Okay? So that's going to be our connection as we work with inverse functions and looking at the derivatives. Okay? In the next video, I will start getting into how to take the derivatives of your inverse trigonometric functions.